Happy Feast of All Saints, everyone. Today's November 1st, in which we celebrate All Saints here in the Catholic Church. And so we thought that perhaps today would be a good opportunity for us to give you a walkthrough of Sacred Heart St. Stephen's Church and just point out some of the images of the saints that we have here at our church. So let's start. The first couple of images that we're going to take a look at are the ones that are in the stained glass. Above the altar, on each side, we have the Holy Family, Jesus crucified in the center, but we have the Blessed Mother next to him, along with Saint Joseph, and then on the far ends, we have Mary's parents, Jesus' grandparents, Saint Anne and Saint Joachim. Following around with the stained glass windows in the church, we could take a look at the first window on the Sacred Heart side. This is of St. Matthew. This is the same St. Matthew that we know wrote the Gospel of St. Matthew. The next stained glass window is that of St. Maria Goretti. Maria Goretti was a martyr who was killed, and later her mother actually forgave her murderer and helped him to convert to Catholicism. The following window is that of St. John Bosco, again a saint of not too long ago in our past, who was a herald of the gospel to the young people in Italy. One of our center stained glass windows is that of St. Stephen, one of our patron saints. And you'll see St. Stephen is dressed as a deacon because he was the first deacon of the Catholic Church, or of the church in general actually, as well as him being a martyr. So he has in his hands the book of Gospels as a deacon would preach, as well as the palm, which is a sign of victory over death. The next stained glass window is a stained glass window of Pope Pius X, St. Pius X. And St. Pius X is one from whom much of our different traditions when it comes to the Eucharist, our modern traditions of the Eucharist and understanding of the Eucharist come from. He was the one that decided to lower the age of receiving communion to the age of 7 years old, so that more people could receive communion. Pope Pius was the Pope when Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary was rebuilt on Hicks and DeGraw Street. And as such, he sent a gift to the parish, to our parish, which was a chalice. And we still use that chalice from St. Pius X on special occasions. The next stained glass window doesn't depict any saints, but it is of Jesus bringing the children together and preaching to them. The last saints in a stained glass window on this side is that of St. Anthony. And even though St. Anthony is here, you'll see above his head is the medallion of St. Mark. And that's because originally St. Mark's image was on this window, but after the fire, he was replaced with St. Anthony in 1951. The stained glass windows on the other side of the church, starting from the entrance, is that of St. Luke. Again, St. Luke that we know of, who wrote the Gospel of Luke, as well as Acts of the Apostles. The next image is of St. Rocco, someone who has great devotion in many areas of Italy and France, followed by St. Catherine of Siena. St. Catherine was a Dominican nun who wrote to the Pope, who had been exiled in France, living a life of luxury while Rome was trampled upon by invaders. And she told the Pope that his place was with his people in Rome, and she convinced him to return. The next stained glass window is St. Patrick. St. Patrick was a great converter of the people of Ireland and therefore a patron saint of Ireland. And his stained glass window is here because the people who originally built this parish church of St. Stephen were the Irish. After St. Patrick is St. Francis of Assisi. St. Francis is the founder of the Franciscan order, but he is also one of the patrons of Italy. See, the country of Italy has two patron saints, St. Francis and Catherine of Siena. After the fire in 1951 at Sacred Heart St. Stephen's Church, the two co-patrons of Italy were placed on the right and the left of St. Patrick, the patron of Ireland. The next stained glass window is that of Mother Cabrini, St. Frances Xavier Cabrini. And many of us know St. Frances Xavier Cabrini lived and worked in our parish, specifically Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary. She established a house with sisters, as well as a school, St. Charles School, on the corner of President and Van Brunt Streets for the Italian immigrants of the Diocese of Brooklyn. And the last saint that we have here depicted in stained glass on this side is John the Evangelist. This would be St. John, who wrote the Gospel of John, as well as the book of Revelation, and the letters of St. John, the first and the second. The last stained glass window we have in the church depicting a saint actually is pretty dark right now, you can't see it, but above our organ we have a great stained glass window of St. Cecilia, the patron saint of music. We also have statues in our church, as many of you know. And if we go around the church, you'll see our first altar is dedicated to St. Stephen. Again, St. Stephen is one of the patrons of our parish. He was the first deacon of the church. You'll see him here depicted in red, because red is the color of martyrdom, being killed for the faith. And he was stoned to death, which is why he has stones in his hand and the palm of victory in his hands as well. The next altar, we have three saints of the church. The first here is St. Bartholomew, one of the apostles, followed by St. John Paul II, followed by St. Peter, the apostle. St. Bartholomew, this statue was brought here by the people of Lipari, which is an island off of Sicily. He is their patron. St. Bartholomew was killed by being flayed. His skin was peeled from his body. And so that's why you see him with the knife in his hand, as well as his own skin hung over his arm. John Paul was the late pontiff. And St. Peter, the apostle, considered the first among equals, holding the keys of heaven and earth in his hand. He was the patron saint of the island of Panarea in Sicily. It's an island off of Sicily, and those people, devotees from that island, brought his statue here. The next altar we have is that of St. Rita. St. Rita was a nun, but prior to being a nun, she was a mother as well as a wife. But she was in abusive relationships. Both her children as well as her husband were very abusive to her. After their death, she devoted herself to a life of Christ in a convent, and she's known as St. Rita of Cascia. Along with her is Santa Rosalia. Santa Rosalia was a hermit, a prayerful woman who secluded herself on Mount Pellegrino, which is a mountain that overlooks Palermo, Sicily. And during a plague in Palermo, the relics or bones of Santa Rosalia were found, and they were processed through the town, and the plague was cured and ended. The people of Palermo, Italy, have great devotion to Santa Rosalia. The next saint that we have here is St. Anne. And you'll see two images on this saint, and that's because St. Anne is the mother of Mary. And so we have Mary here, the Blessed Mother, and Anne, her mom, above her teaching her. Next to her is a saint, Saint Restituta. Saint Restituta is the patron saint of the island of Ischia, which is in the Bay of Naples. The people of that island brought her image here when they immigrated to the United States and here in Brooklyn. Next to her is the image of Santa Lucia. St. Lucy, another martyr of the early church, was martyred in the town of Syracuse in Sicily. And the people of Sicily, of Syracuse in Sicily, consider her their patron saint. She is considered also the patroness of people with eye ailments and the blind, as her eyes were plucked from her. She devoted her life to Christ, even against the wishes of the local king. And on Court Street, you could see that there's a shrine set up from the people of Syracuse on the corner of 3rd Place and Court Street in honor of St. Lucy, which the Balsamo family take care of. St. Michael the Archangel is here. St. Michael is one of the archangels. His image was brought here by the people of Procida, which is an island in the Bay of Naples. Another image we have here is of the Blessed Mother. She is a saint after all, and she is with St. Gabriel. And Gabriel is announcing to her the fact that she is going to bear Christ She's going to bear the Son of God. And so this is known as Madonna dei Miracoli, or Our Lady of the miracle being the incarnation, Christ among us. And people of Colisano in Sicily brought that image here to us. This is St. Angelo. Now, St. Angelo was a Carmelite, and he lived all throughout Italy and Sicily, and he's known as being a patron of earthquakes, but more than that, he was a martyr. And what he was martyred for was defending marriage. And so he's considered one of the patron saints of marriage. He was martyred in the town of Licata, Sicily, and that's where his relics are in Sicily. And the people of Licata brought his statue here to the church. The last statue on this side, and the first when you enter the church, is that of St. John the Baptist. St. John the Baptist, a contemporary of Jesus, his cousin, as a matter of fact, it would be Elizabeth's son. He was one of the first to proclaim the coming of Christ when he leapt in the womb of his mother at the visitation. And he was also the one that was in the desert announcing the coming of Christ and asking for repentance. You'll see that by the symbol of the lamb in his arm and his hands stretched up to God, the sheepskin that he wore, the camel skin, and the red cloak signifying his martyrdom. The people of Pozzallo, Sicily, had this statue commissioned, as he's one of their co-patrons of the town of Pozzallo in Sicily. At the rear of the church is Our Lady of the Rosary, one of the newest additions to our church. Our Lady of the Rosary is known as the Italian-American Madonna, or the image of the Italians here in America. She's also known as Our Lady of the Pompeii of the Rosary, and she's here giving the rosary to two saints. One saint is Saint Dominic on the left, the founder of the Dominican order, the order of preachers, and Saint Catherine of Siena, who we mentioned in stained glass before, who is also a Dominican. While we have the Dominican saints in the rear on one side of our church, we have the Franciscan saints on the other side of the rear of the church. The three saints imaged here are St. Anthony from the left, Padre Pio in the middle, and St. Francis of Assisi on the right. All three belonging to the order which St. Francis founded when he heard the call from God, which told him to rebuild his church. At first, he rebuilt the little chapel, thinking it was something physical he had to do. And later on, he realized it was a spiritual rebuilding that the church needed to go through, which focused on poverty and service to the poor and the truth of the Gospels. Padre Pio followed the same charism, also understanding that we needed to heal the sick, and founded a hospital in San Giovanni Rotondo, which is still in operation today. And he was a great healer of souls through the sacrament of confession. St. Anthony, who was really Portuguese and later became a Franciscan in the town of Padua, Italy, he's here depicted with the gospel book in his hand and the infant Jesus. And that's because St. Anthony was best known as being a great preacher of the Gospels. In fact, when his body was exhumed to see if whether or not he would become a saint, they found that his tongue was perfectly preserved as if he had just passed away. Because of his use of it, we understand, in the preaching of the Gospels. St. Rocco is the first saint on the other side of the church. St. Rocco, again, has great devotion throughout Italy, as well as France. This next altar, you'll see three images of the Blessed Mother, all of St. Mary, the Mother of Jesus. The first on the left is that of the Madonna de Laura, Our Lady of Praise, and she's a patron saint of a town called Meta in Salerno. The central image here is Our Lady of the Assumption. Our Lady of the Assumption, this is a depiction of Mary at the end of her earthly life, when because she was sinless, did not die, but instead rose body and soul right into heaven. So that's Mary being raised into heaven, body and soul. The last image on this altar is of Mary, and she's holding a letter. And she is the patron saint of a town called Messina in Sicily, Madonna de Lettere. And the story goes that the Blessed Mother had someone write a letter to the town, the people of Messina, talking about the fact that they should follow her son Jesus. And so this is a depiction of that image. The Assumption image is actually also in the middle, a representation and exact likeness to the statue of Our Lady of the Assumption in the town of Monte de Procida in Naples. Our next altar begins with another image of Mary. This is of Madonna Porto Salvo, or the Port of Salvation, which has many links to many towns throughout Sicily that have ports, as well as Italy and Calabria. And this particular image came from Calabria. In the center here is another image of Mary from Naples, Madonna dell'Arco, followed by an image of Saint Candida. Saint Candida was an Ethiopian woman who was devoted to Christ and the church, and because of that devotion, she was martyred. And upon her martyring, the local lord had her dismembered, placed in a barrel, and dropped into the Mediterranean. Her remains washed up on the island of Ventotene, off of Italy, and the people of Ventotene took her as their patron, understanding her martyrdom and the fact that she died for Christ, a true testament to the gospel. The next two saints we have on our side altars are another two martyrs, Saints Cosmos and Damian. We hear about Cosmos and Damian during the Eucharistic prayer sometimes, as well as some of the other early works of the church. They were Roman citizens who were physicians in the service of Caesar's army, and they converted to Christianity. Upon converting to Christianity, they would no longer offer sacrifice to the emperor, who was considered a god, and therefore they were martyred, Saints Cosmos and Damian, also known as patrons of doctors. The next image we have in our church is that again of the Blessed Mother under the title of Our Lady of Sorrow. The dagger in her heart refers to the gospel passage which refers to Simeon in the temple telling Mary that her son and the sorrow she would face because of him would pierce her heart. It's the sorrow of a mother watching her son die and suffer. The next image, and that image was brought to us here by the people of Mola de Bari. Mola de Bari. The next image is Our Lady of Mount Carmel, depiction again of Mary and Jesus, but this time dressed in the habit of a Carmelite, followed by Saint George, or Santo Giorgio. Saint George, again, was a soldier, and he is the patron saint of Reggio Calabria, the town in Calabria, Italy. Here we have Saint Teresa, the Little Flower. Saint Teresa, as well as both of her parents, are saints. She was a Carmelite nun. She was a great mystic, one of the doctors of the church. She had great spirituality, which focused on the little things in life, the little things as signs to us from God and His goodness. Again, we have here, as we do in stained glass, an image of Mother Cabrini. Mother Cabrini being the sister who arrived here in our own neighborhood on Van Brunt and President Street in the 1890s, around 1892. She established the first school for Italian immigrant children. She also helped teach catechism and religious education to the Italian immigrants pouring into Brooklyn, which was about 5,000 at the time, trying to secure the faith for this new immigrant population. She's known as the patron saint of immigrants throughout the church and the world, as well as a patron saint for new evangelization because of the fact that she established so many schools, hospitals, orphanages during her life. This saint, this image of the saint, of Mother Cabrini, was made using the death mask, or the mold of her face, which was cast at the time of her death. This was something that was typical and was done when someone was thought to have been a saint. A mold of their face would be made so that it could be used later on to be cast in wax to place over their face if their mortal remains were to be placed out for people to venerate and pray. Mother Cabrini's body is on display with a wax face mask at the Shrine of Mother Cabrini in Washington Heights, where her body is. After Mother Cabrini, we have St. Jude. St. Jude is known as the patron saint of the apostles, of the impossible. I'm sorry. He was an apostle, and he's considered a patron saint again of the impossible. Saint Joseph is next. Saint Joseph being the husband of Mary, the father of Jesus. And Saint Joseph we understand as the universal protector of the church, just as he protected the first church, which was Mary and Jesus in their home. The last image we have is not of a saint, but it's of Jesus himself, under the title of the Infant of Prague, which is a devotion to the infant Jesus. Our last saint image of someone who's a saint is that of the Blessed Mother, who is a saint. She's the Queen of all saints. And the Blessed Mother here is depicted in the image of Our Lady of Lourdes from Lourdes, France, which was a vision of Saint Bernadette. We also have paintings of saints in our church, if you've ever looked up high enough. Above the Blessed Mother is an image of Saint Vincent Pallotti. Saint Vincent Pallotti was the founder of the Palatine Order. The Palatine Order were among the founders of Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary Parish, the Italian parish, which later became Sacred Heart St. Stephen's, as well as the sisters of St. Vincent Pallotti, the Palatines, were the ones that taught in our high school, St. Stephen High School. Above the image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus is a painting, again, of Mother Cabrini, who we spoke about before, which is perfect because of her devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And underneath the Sacred Heart of Jesus is a relic of Mother Cabrini in the reliquary there, a piece of her body for devotees to come and look at and pray before. At the top of our nave, we see a few saint images. They're easier to see when you're here, but up above here, the first is Saint John the 23rd, who was a pope, and he was the pope when these paintings were painted, followed by Saint Pius X, who we spoke about before, Saint Peter, Saint Teresa, Saint Stephen, Saint Patrick, and then the Blessed Mother and Child is at the end. Starting at the opposite side of the church, above the organ, is a painting of Saint Mark, Saint Jude, Saint Gabriel, the Archangel, Saint Mary as the Blessed Mother of Sorrows, Saint John Bosco, Jesus preaching, and Saint Pius XII. Pius XII was the pontiff or the pope when the church was burnt in 1951, as well as when it merged in 1941. John the 23rd was pope when the church was repainted, and for that reason you see when you come in person that he doesn't have a halo because he was not yet a saint, which he has since been named. I hope you enjoyed the little tour of our saints here on the Feast of All Saints that we have here in the church. Remember, saints are those who we know as well as perhaps those who we don't know, who have seen the face of God, those who we believe are definitely in heaven with God the Father and Jesus his Son. Remember the old adage too, what is a saint? Well, saints are people who the sun shines through. That means like a stained glass window, the S-U-N shines through them, but more than that, means that the S-O-N, the Son of God, the Son of Man, Jesus, shines through them in their life. The one thing that we'll always see common about all saints is the one person, the one thing that saints point us to is that of Jesus. They all point in the same direction, which is Jesus. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a good day. Happy All Saints Day.